I was called a gold digger by my boyfriend in front of his wealthy family at dinner. So I paid the $3,200 bill and left with the man sitting quietly across the table, his father, the CEO. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and please do not forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved ones. I still remember how excited I was that morning. Mason had invited me to dinner with his family. He said it was a big deal, something important, and that I should dress for the occasion. I didn't have anything fancy, so he brought over a dress he said he bought just for me. It was beautiful, deep emerald green, soft silk, fit like it was made for me. I thanked him a dozen times. I didn't know until later it belonged to his sister. We pulled up to this 5-star restaurant downtown, one of those places where the valet doesn't even wait for your keys. They just know. I stepped out of the car and instantly felt like I didn't belong. Inside, the lights were low and golden, the kind of place where no one raises their voice, and everything smells like quiet money. Mason's family was already there. His mother gave me a quick glance, then returned to her wine without smiling. His brother nodded, but didn't bother standing. His sister barely looked up from her phone. I tried to smile through it. Maybe they were just shy or formal. I kept thinking that. Mason leaned in and whispered that I looked perfect. That helped, a little. Then someone new sat across from me. A man in his late 50s, sharp suit, quiet confidence. He didn't say much, just gave me a small nod. Mason introduced him as Richard Calloway. My heart jumped. I had just interviewed with his company a week ago. He was the CEO. I froze a little. Did Mason know I applied there? I hadn't told him. I forced a polite smile and nodded back. The waiter came. Everyone ordered without looking at the menu. When it was my turn, Mason told the waiter, "She'll have the scallops. She loves scallops." I don't. I'm allergic. I gently corrected him and ordered something else, pretending not to notice the look his mother gave me. As dinner started, I tried to make conversation. I asked his brother about his business. He answered with one word. I asked his mother about her charity work. She smiled thinly and said, "It's not something I can explain quickly." Every word I said seemed to echo in silence. I could feel their eyes on me, like they were studying me, judging. Not one of them asked me a single question about myself, except Richard. He didn't ask anything directly, but every now and then, I'd feel his gaze. Not rude, not creepy, just thoughtful, like he was watching something unfold. And somehow, I already knew this dinner wasn't about welcoming me into their family. It was a test, and I was already failing. As the dinner went on, I tried to focus on my plate and tune out the stiffness around the table. But no matter how quiet I kept, the tension seemed to thicken with every passing minute. I leaned slightly to grab my glass of water, and that's when I heard it. Mason's mother and sister were whispering. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but they weren't exactly careful. His mother said, "She's exactly the type. Look at the dress. Probably borrowed. She's clearly after something." His sister laughed softly and muttered, "Obviously, she's just trying to land a last name, not a relationship." The words hit harder than I expected. I froze, glass halfway to my mouth. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just looked down and felt my stomach knot. Then Mason turned to me, grinning like we were on some light-hearted game show. "So," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "how much do you make again? What's your salary now?" He laughed, like it was a joke. "Just curious. I mean, you've got expensive taste. Those earrings, that purse." I blinked, trying to smile. "I thought we talked about keeping work separate from tonight." "Right," he said, drawing the word out. "But come on, babe. I'm just saying. It's kind of funny, right? You interview at my dad's company, show up in designer stuff, and now you're sitting at our table. It's a good look." It wasn't a joke. It was a performance. For them. I glanced at Richard Calloway, seated directly across from me. He still hadn't said much, but his expression hadn't changed either. Calm, unreadable. He wasn't eating. He was watching, not just me. All of it. I tried to breathe, to stay calm, but then Mason leaned back in his chair, chuckled, and said loud enough for the next table to hear, "Let's be real. We all know why you're here. You're not dating me. You're dating my future inheritance." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was suffocating. I looked at him, waiting for him to laugh, to say he was kidding, but he didn't. He just smirked like he'd made the best joke of the night. That was the moment I stopped feeling embarrassed. I wasn't even angry yet. I just sat there, stunned, realizing that this entire dinner wasn't a gesture of inclusion, it was a trap, and I had walked right into it. For a few long seconds, no one at the table moved. Mason's words still hung in the air like a bad smell. His mother took a slow sip of wine. His sister glanced away, pretending to check her phone. His brother stifled a laugh. I felt every pair of eyes avoid mine, except for one. Richard Calloway was still watching me. I kept my hands folded in my lap and forced myself to sit up straighter. I wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not in front of these people. The back of my neck felt hot. My face burned. I could feel the humiliation crawling under my skin, but I didn't say anything. Then the waiter appeared, quiet and polite, holding a sleek black folder. He placed it gently between Mason and Richard without saying a word. It was the check, and based on the place, the wine, and the endless appetizers, I knew it wasn't going to be small. Mason didn't even blink. He reached out, picked up the folder, looked inside, and let out a little whistle. Wow, that's a number. Then he slid the folder toward me. I stared at it, then at him. "You wanted a taste of the good life, right?" he said, smiling. "Why don't you go ahead and show us you can afford it?" His sister chuckled under her breath. His mother smirked into her glass. His brother muttered something I couldn't catch, but it made Mason grin wider. I stared at the folder for a second. Then I looked at Richard. He was still watching me, expression calm. But then, for the first time that night, he spoke. "If she pays," he said, voice low but firm, "she leaves with me." The whole table went silent again. But this time it was different. Mason blinked, confused. His mother's face stiffened. Even his brother looked unsure. "What?" Mason asked, half laughing, like he didn't hear it right. Richard didn't repeat himself. He just looked at me, not with pity, not with kindness, just a steady look, like he was giving me a choice, or maybe waiting to see what I'd do. I reached slowly into my purse, pulled out my card, and slid it into the folder without a word. The waiter appeared immediately, took it, and vanished again. No one said anything. No one moved. I had just paid for dinner, and I wasn't staying. The waiter returned quickly, setting the leather folder in front of me without a sound. I opened it, glanced at the total, $3,213.48, and didn't flinch. My hands were steady as I slipped my card inside. I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask questions. I just did it. A small gasp came from Mason's sister. His brother gave a low whistle. Mason laughed, but it was forced, too loud. "Wow, okay, power move. She's got jokes tonight," he said, like this was still a game. But his voice cracked at the end. He knew it wasn't. The waiter returned with the receipt. I signed it slowly, carefully, and slid it back without looking up. Then I turned to the staff behind me with a small smile. "Thank you. Everything was perfect," I said, softly but clearly. Then I turned my attention to Mason's mother. She was staring at me like she couldn't quite believe what just happened. Her glass hovered in the air, untouched. I leaned slightly toward her, keeping my voice even. "I wasn't raised to be bought," I said. "Unlike your son." She blinked, lips parting like she wanted to respond, but nothing came out. I stood, smooth and calm, brushing a crease from the borrowed dress. Mason reached for my arm, but I stepped away before he could touch me. "Wait, Elise, come on," he said. "It was just a joke. Don't make this dramatic." Before I could answer, Richard stood. It was quiet, no dramatic scrape of a chair, no rush. Just him, calmly rising. He adjusted his cufflinks and looked straight at me. "You've had enough of this circus," he said, extending his arm. "Shall we?" I didn't hesitate. I placed my hand lightly on his arm, and together we walked toward the exit, past Mason, past the frozen family, past the table where I was tested, mocked, and underestimated. No one said a word. No one stopped us. Outside, the valet hurried to open the door, clearly recognizing Richard. The air was cool against my skin, but I felt steady, clear. As we reached the car, Richard opened the door for me himself. "You handled that better than most executives I know," he said quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I had walked in as someone's girlfriend, a guest, a target. I was leaving as someone else entirely, and I wasn't looking back. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft hum, sealing us into quiet. I finally exhaled. It was the first full breath I'd taken all evening. Richard stood beside me, still calm, still composed. The soft lighting in the elevator caught the silver at his temples. He didn't speak. He just waited. The numbers above us ticked downward. I reached into my purse and pulled out the small folded card he had slipped under the table earlier. Before the bill arrived, I held it out to him. "I think you left this behind." He glanced at it, then at me. "That wasn't for the bill," he said. "That was an invitation." I paused. "To what?" "To a future," he said simply. I stared at him, unsure what to say. "You applied to Callaway Innovations last month," he continued. "Senior project manager role. You were qualified, more than qualified." He looked over at me, but the file disappeared before it reached my desk. "When I found out you were connected to Mason, I looked into it." My stomach turned. "He told me they weren't hiring anymore." Richard gave a tight smile. "That's what he wanted you to believe. Your application was flagged and shelved by someone inside. It didn't go missing. It was buried." It made sense now. The sudden silence after the interview. The HR manager's weirdly short email. Mason's strangely timed offer to take care of everything so I wouldn't have to work too hard. He hadn't just tried to keep me out of his world. He tried to make sure I never built my own. "He sabotaged it," I said quietly. Richard nodded. "Mason doesn't want equal. He wants puppets. You're not that." I stared at the card in my hand. Simple, clean, just his name, number, and company logo. But it felt heavier now. "I'm reopening your file," Richard said. "The offer is real. You'll report directly to me. Full authority, no strings. I don't hire out of pity. I hire because I see what people can do." The elevator dinged. We reached the garage level. The doors opened and cool air flowed in. I stepped out, heels clicking against the polished floor. I still hadn't said yes. Not yet. But I hadn't handed the card back either. Behind me, Richard spoke again. "When someone tries to keep you small," he said, "it usually means they know how far you can go." I didn't reply. I didn't have to. I just kept walking, the card still in my hand, and a new path unfolding quietly in front of me. My first day at Callaway Innovations didn't start with a welcome tour or a team meeting. It started with a signature. Richard handed me a slim folder marked confidential. Inside was a tightly worded NDA, written specifically for one event, the dinner. "Why an NDA for that night?" I asked, flipping through the pages. He gave a slow nod, leaning back in his chair. "Because that wasn't just a family dinner. It was a test. And you weren't the one being evaluated." I looked. "You were testing Mason." "I was confirming something I already suspected," he said. "He's been leaking sensitive documents to a competitor. Minor stuff at first, small enough not to raise alarms. But recently, it escalated. And when I traced the latest breach, your name showed up." I blinked. "My name?" Richard nodded. "He used your job application and digital footprint to cover his tracks. If the investigation had gone public before I caught it, you'd be under scrutiny, maybe even facing legal trouble." My blood ran cold. "He was willing to burn you to protect himself," Richard said. "I had to see, firsthand, just how far he'd go, and he went exactly where I thought he would." I stared down at the NDA. Signing it would seal what happened at that dinner, permanently. No interviews, no stories, no leaks. Just quiet knowledge between the people who mattered. "I'll sign it," I said. He slid me a pen. I scrawled my name, slow and deliberate, across the line. "Good," he said. "Now we can talk about your real role." I'd assumed I'd be starting in a department, operations maybe, or project oversight, but Richard had other plans. "You won't be anyone's assistant," he said. "You'll be reporting directly to me. I want you shadowing my day-to-day, watching how decisions are made, who makes them, and what it costs." I didn't know what to say. "Why me?" "Because you don't flinch," he said. "You sat across from people who wanted to see you fold, and you didn't. You paid the price, literally and figuratively, without blinking. That tells me more than a resume ever could." I sat back, trying to let it all sink in. A few days ago, I was just hoping to land an interview. Now I was being asked to shadow the CEO himself. "You're not just being trained," he added. "You're being prepared. I won't live forever. I'm building this company's future, and I need someone who knows how to survive a table full of knives." I nodded, slowly. I had entered that dinner as someone's girlfriend. Now I was being groomed to take over the empire he tried to keep from me. Working under Richard gave me access I never dreamed of. I was in high-level meetings, reviewing internal reports, handling sensitive files. I moved quietly, never drawing attention, always watching, And the more I looked, the more things didn't add up, especially in the finance reports tied to R&D. One night, long after most people had left the office, I found it. A trail of transfers buried under layers of internal project codes. At first, they looked like regular vendor payments, but they were too clean, too consistent. When I followed the paper trail, it led to shell accounts. Accounts tied to a rival tech firm we'd been losing bids to for months. It was Mason. He was bleeding the company from inside, slowly, quietly, but he was getting sloppy. I didn't tell Richard right away. Instead, I started building a case, screenshots, document copies, timestamps. I even used Mason's own login to trace one of the fund movements. If I went to Richard too early, it could all vanish. I had to be sure. And to do that, I had to keep up appearances, which meant playing nice at the next family event, a garden brunch at the Callaway estate. Mason greeted me like nothing had happened. He wore his fake charm like a second skin. "You look amazing," he said, handing me a mimosa. "I've missed you," I smiled back. "You know, I've been thinking about us." He lit up. "Yeah," I nodded. "I feel like we got off track. Maybe we were both too focused on other things." He leaned in. "We can fix it. You and me, we always had something, right?" I leaned closer. "We still do." He looked pleased, comfortable. That's when I slipped a recording device into his coat pocket, already rolling. Over the next hour, I steered the conversation toward business, money, pressure, family expectations. He opened up without realizing it, bragging about managing risk and how Dad doesn't know half of what goes on under his nose. Every word was a nail in his own coffin. Meanwhile, Richard was preparing the board behind the scenes. He knew enough to suspect Mason, but I was about to give him proof, real proof. 1 week later, a surprise shareholder meeting was scheduled. Mason thought it was a routine update. He had no idea what was coming. But I did, and I was ready. The boardroom was quiet when I walked in. Richard was already seated at the head of the long table, surrounded by the company's top executives and shareholders. No one looked surprised to see me. He'd prepared them. What they weren't prepared for was what I brought with me. I placed a thick folder on the center of the table and spoke clearly. "Before we begin today's meeting, there's something that needs to be seen and heard." Eyes shifted toward Richard, but he simply nodded. "She has the floor." I pulled out a flash drive and connected it to the monitor. Within seconds, the screen lit up with spreadsheets, email chains, and transfer logs. One by one, I walked them through it all. Dates, amounts, shell accounts, competitor connections. Each step mapped out like a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to Mason. A few board members exchanged uneasy looks. One leaned forward. "How did you find this?" "I didn't find it," I said. "He left it where he thought no one would look, because he never expected anyone to look." Then I pressed play on the recording. Mason's voice filled the room, smug, careless, bragging about moving money under the radar, manipulating internal controls, and most importantly, covering his tracks using my name. The timing was perfect, because right then, the door swung open. Mason walked in, late as usual, carrying his phone and a coffee like it was just another day. He froze when he saw the screen. Then he saw me, standing in front of it. "What the hell is this?" he asked. Richard didn't answer. One of the board members cleared his throat. "We've heard enough. Mr. Callaway, do you wish to proceed with the vote?" Richard nodded. Proceed. It wasn't even close. The vote passed unanimously. Mason was stripped of his board seat, all company access, and every remaining share that hadn't yet vested. His voice shook as he tried to protest. "Dad, come on. You're really going to let her do this?" Richard stood slowly. "She saved this company from you. Be grateful she didn't press charges." Mason looked at me, furious. "You think this makes you better than me?" I didn't blink. I stepped forward, close enough for only him to hear. "I'm not a gold digger," I said. "I just know what gold looks like. And it isn't you." I turned and walked back to the head of the table, my new seat. Behind me, Mason stood frozen, realizing too late that the woman he tried to humiliate had just buried his entire future, and she didn't even raise her voice. After the board meeting, Mason's fall was fast and loud. He wasn't just fired, he was publicly embarrassed, and he didn't take it quietly. Within days, anonymous rumors started to surface. Whispers about me sleeping my way into a promotion, manipulating Richard, forging documents. It was desperate and sloppy, but damaging enough that a few minor outlets picked it up. I knew where it was coming from, but Richard saw it coming too. Before the stories could spread, he called a press conference. Calmly, confidently, he announced that due to my critical role in uncovering internal fraud and saving millions in losses, I would be stepping in as interim CEO during the company's restructuring. He didn't mention Mason's name. He didn't have to. He called me the future of innovation. And just like that, the rumors died. Still, I knew I had to stay grounded. So I went back to where it started. My old neighborhood, the library where I first learned to code, the corner store where I bought coffee during my first unpaid internship. I didn't go for attention. I went to remind myself why I worked so hard to escape this place and why I needed to give back. By the end of the week, I donated the funds to start a mentorship program for young women in tech. Real training, real job placement, no handouts, just opportunity. That same afternoon, a package arrived at my office. No note, just an envelope with my name on it in neat, slanted cursive. Inside was a letter, written in the same handwriting. I was wrong about you. I judged you before I ever knew your story. You didn't take our family down. You just showed us who we already were. The dress belongs to you now, properly, this time. I hope you wear it again someday, for yourself. Signed simply, Margot Calloway, Mason's mother. Under the letter, folded neatly, was the emerald green dress, cleaned, pressed, and wrapped in tissue paper. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded the letter, tucked it back into the envelope, and put both in my desk drawer. I didn't reply. Some doors are better left closed. The ballroom glittered with soft gold light, filled with the hum of laughter and quiet music. Champagne flutes clinked as donors and executives moved from table to table. At the head table, I sat beside Richard, dressed in a sleek black gown. Not borrowed, not gifted, but chosen by me. It had been 6 months since the board vote. 6 months of rebuilding, restructuring, and proving myself again. This time, at the top, Richard stood and tapped his glass gently. The room quieted. I've built this company for decades, he said, but it's time to pass the torch to someone who's earned it, not by name, but by action. He turned to me. Elise is no longer interim. As of today, she is the official CEO of Calloway Innovations. The applause erupted before he even finished the sentence. Flashbulbs went off across the room. Then I saw him, Mason, standing in the back near the bar, alone, no tie, holding a drink he hadn't touched. His face was unreadable, but I saw the flicker of something. Regret, maybe, or just shock. I leaned slightly toward Richard, keeping my eyes on Mason. Next time someone calls me a gold digger, I said under my breath, smiling, I'll just say, you're damn right, I dig for diamonds. Richard laughed softly beside me. Well, you found one. The music swelled again. More cameras flashed. I raised my glass, smiled for the photographers, and turned back to the room. Not to the past, not to him, just forward. And I never looked back. What do you think? Was Elise right to walk out and take control of her own future? Or should she have tried to forgive Mason and his family? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story and want more jaw-dropping moments like this one, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.